Almost 100 years ago, in 1928, Scientific American, already one of the world's most respected science magazines, posed a question researchers still can't answer. A question that leaves archaeologists, linguists, and historians puzzled. It sounds simple, but behind it sits one of the strangest anomalies in human history. Where did the Sumerians come from? This isn't just academic curiosity. It's a mystery about the very birth of civilization. Great civilizations usually follow a familiar path. Rome grew from a tiny village into a global empire over centuries. Egypt slowly coalesced from scattered tribes along the Nile, gradually inventing writing and monumental architecture. The Sumerians were different. No primitive stages, no long, slow buildup. Around 3,500 years before the Common Era, on the barren plains of Mesopotamia, a fully formed society appears, as if out of nowhere. Ready-made cities, codified laws, sophisticated astronomy. The world's first writing. A civilization with no rough draft. It simply appeared. The mystery deepens when you turn to Sumerian. It's a linguistic orphan. All languages belong to families. Indo-European, Semitic, Turkic. Each has ancestors, siblings, distant relatives, threads you can follow back through time. Sumerian stands utterly alone. No known relatives, alive or dead. It appeared as abruptly as their cities did, leaving no traces that reach further into the past. A blind wall researchers have been up against for a century. Today we go straight to the heart of the mystery. We'll see their knowledge in action as we unpack the mathematics built into the ziggurats. Mathematics far ahead of its time. We'll witness startling rituals inside royal tombs that overturn our usual ideas about the ancient world. We'll dive into flood myths and stories of kings who ruled for hundreds of thousands of years and try to separate fact from fiction. Step by step, every clue laid out on the table. We'll attempt to answer that very question from the old journal. A civilization without a past. A language without roots. One question follows naturally. If their culture really did spring up literally out of nowhere, where did the knowledge that underpins our entire world come from? 4,000 years before the Common Era, the city of Uruk. Not just a settlement, the first metropolis in human history. Here, the architect's morning doesn't begin with coffee. It begins with a clay tablet. Not a to-do list, mathematics. Complex, precise. The backbone of everything. He unfurls the clay plan and doesn't see chaos. He sees strict order. Residential quarters, a temple complex, streets meeting at right angles, and a network of canals carrying water through the city. This civilization follows a blueprint. His path takes him to the heart of Uruk, to the foot of a ziggurat still rising. This stepped tower is not just a temple, it's a math problem built out of brick. Thousands of workers raise it without cranes or modern tools, yet they place each stone with astonishing precision. That precision comes from their number system, one that feels foreign to us. They didn't count by tens, they counted by 60s. It's the same system that survives today in how we divide an hour into minutes and seconds and a circle into degrees. Every angle, every slope, every terrace follows formulas Europeans would only rediscover thousands of years later. One clay tablet, known as YBC 7289, records the square root of 2 carried out to the 6th decimal place. That's engineering at a level we would call modern. And they used it in practice, building monuments with almost no margin for error. By the end of the day, thousands of builders form a line. They don't get coins, coins don't exist yet. They get paid in beer. That beer is the standard wage, written into the world's first code of laws. Then a shout. One worker falls from the scaffolding. A healer bolts over and doesn't chant spells. He rinses the wound with clean water. Then he pours on the same beer, using it as a mild antiseptic, and wraps the cut in a fresh linen bandage. Medicine built on hygiene, not magic. By law, the site owner must cover the injured man's care. This is a society that puts a price on life and health, and that price is recorded on a clay tablet. In the evening, walking home, an architect sees the city working like a single organism. The canal system not only brings water, it also acts as the first sewage network in history, channeling waste and keeping the streets clean. Houses built from fired brick, grand public buildings, markets that hum with life. This is not the primitive world many imagine. It's an engineering marvel born in the desert. High-precision mathematics. Fair, codified laws, medicine that outpaced its time, urban infrastructure that many capitals 1,000 years later would envy. All of it adds up to an almost perfect, intensely rational society. So here's the hard question. How could a civilization that had secured the rights of the ordinary mud brick builder also carry out a ritual so monstrous that its discoverer, archaeologist Leonard Woolley, hid part of his finds from the public for decades? 1922. The Iraqi Desert. British archaeologist Leonard Woolley stands amid the ruins of the ancient city of Ur. The air hangs thick with dust and heat. For years his team has been peeling back layer after layer of history, and the world has no idea what lies just beneath their feet. When Woolley finally finds what he's been looking for, he sends his telegrams to London in code. He writes them in Latin. Not for show, to keep the scale of the discovery from rivals and reporters until he can figure out exactly what he's uncovered. Tombs rise from the sand. Not one. Not 10. 1,800 burials. The royal tombs of Ur. Inside, treasures that left the world momentarily stunned. A gold harp topped with a bull's head of lapis lazuli. Game boards inlaid with mother of pearl. And the famed helmet of Mescalamdug, hammered from a single sheet of pure gold, every curl of the king's hair rendered in metal. This wasn't merely luxury. It was art at a level that seemed impossible for a civilization living 2,500 years before Rome. The world reeled at the wealth. But that awe would soon give way to something far darker. Among all those tombs, one stood apart. Woolley called it the Great Death Pit. Inside, in perfect order, lay 74 bodies. 6 warriors in copper helmets lay by the entrance. 10 women wore lavish gold jewelry. Musicians had their fingers still on the strings of their harps. Beside each person sat a small clay cup. The most chilling detail wasn't the number of the dead. It was that the bones showed no sign of violence. No one had killed them. They had come here by their own choice. At their ruler's funeral, they donned their finest clothes, took their tools, and willingly drank poison. They lay down calmly and died, following their king into the afterlife. But Woolley's most astonishing discovery didn't come from the tombs. It came from beneath them. After he removed the gold and cataloged the bones, he ordered the team to dig deeper. The workers cut through the cultural layer, and their shovels struck something unexpected. Not ordinary soil. A 3-meter-thick seam of pure river silt, as tall as the ceiling in a typical apartment. Beneath a city of kings who practiced human sacrifice, he uncovered physical evidence of the Great Flood. Their story of a flood that washed the world away turned out not to be a myth, but a geological fact. But what if that's not the only one of their legends that contains a kernel of truth? What about the myth that kings each ruled for 30,000 years? A 3-meter layer of silt under the tombs of Ur showed the Great Flood wasn't just a legend. But the Sumerians wrote about more than the flood itself. They recorded a world that existed before it. And those chronicles force us to rethink what we mean by history, stretching its boundaries to almost unthinkable lengths. Excavators uncovered a document among the Cuneiform archives that historians now call the Sumerian King List. This isn't merely a list of rulers, it's a direct challenge to common sense. According to the list, 8 kings ruled the earth before the flood. Together they reigned for 241,200 years. This is not a misprint. 8 rulers across a span longer than the entire history of our species. One of them, Enmenlu-Ana, sat on the throne for 43,200 years. Another, Alalgar, reigned for 36,000 years. Numbers our minds simply refuse to take seriously. It's easy to write those dates off as mythology, except for one problem. On that same list, right after the flood, a name appears that everyone knows: Gilgamesh. For a long time, people treated him as a fictional hero, a character from legend. Then archaeology proved otherwise. Gilgamesh was a real ruler of the city of Uruk. He reigned at the very moment when, in nearby Ur, just a few days' journey away, 74 courtiers willingly drank poison in the Great Pit of Death. A mythic hero and a brutal reality existed side by side, in the same time, in the same culture. This was a real king, living in an age of ritual horrors. He became the central figure of the first literary work in human history, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It isn't just a list of feats, it's the first recorded meditation on death. the first desperate search for immortality, a story of friendship, loss, and the bitter acceptance of one's own mortality. Thousands of years before the Greek philosophers and the prophets of the Bible, the Sumerians were already asking the same eternal questions we still wrestle with. The picture starts to take shape. On one side of the scale, mathematics on a cosmic scale and the world's first philosophy. On the other, mass ritual suicides and myths about kings who supposedly ruled longer than the mountains. We can see what they built, we can read what they thought. But after 100 years of excavations, the central question remains: has modern science, and with all its tools and technology, come any closer to unraveling their origins? 100 years have passed since someone first asked that question. An entire century of genetic analysis, satellite archaeology, and computer modeling. Technologies that would have looked like magic to ancient gods. And after all that work, the question, where did they come from, only became more complicated. Science didn't get any closer to an answer. It only traced the edges of a deeper chasm in our ignorance. They remain an anomaly, a people who seem to appear from nowhere, a fingerprint on history's glass, as if someone no one has ever seen had left it. Searching for their homeland plays out like a detective story chasing a trail that went cold long ago. Some researchers point to the highlands of the Caucasus, arguing they found echoes of Sumerian metallurgy and faint overlaps in ancient crafts. Others turn their eyes to the warm waters of the Persian Gulf, hoping the submerged continental shelf will yield traces of prehistoric settlements the sea might have swallowed. These are all circumstantial clues. Intriguing, but not enough. The main witness, their language, remains silent. It gives no sign of the Caucasus, no hint of Asia, no link to the seabed. It shows no kinship with any other language on the planet, leaving every hypothesis hanging in the air. Here's the paradox. We don't know who they are, but they know us every single day. Look at a clock. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. That's not a law of nature, it's their choice. Their 60-based number system. Draw a circle and you get 360 degrees. That's not a coincidence, it's their math. They built an invisible architecture, an operating system for time and space that we still use without thinking about it. A ghost people we can't find shaped the very way we measure our existence. All this brings us back to where Leonard Woolley began. The Iraqi desert, face to face with something vast and unfathomable. A civilization with no precursor, a language with no ancestors, mathematics that ran thousands of years ahead of its time. We are their heirs, yet we don't even know their name. They gave us the foundations of the world but left no return address. They mapped the motions of the stars and hid their own origin. After 100 years of searching, only humility remains. And one last question, the one that no longer needs an answer. Who were you, nameless architects of time?